Vechom Aboim to this Farbrengen in honor of this special and holy day of Chof Av, the Yartzeit and Hilula of the Rebbe's father, Keren Levi Yitzchak. The Rebbe asked that we should take part in this Farbrengen on this day. So just to open, I'm going to read out the Rebbe's letter that the Rebbe wrote requesting that we should mark this special day and we should participate in this Farbrengen. It was a letter of Motzoi Tisha B'Av Tafshin Mem Daled that was sent to numerous shluchim. The letter was discussing Chamisha Asar B'Av, and then the Rebbe added that the Shabbos Shala Achrei Tesvav Menachem Av Hu Chof Menachem Av, that the Shabbos after Chamisha Asar B'Av is Chof Av, and that year was Shabbos, which is Yom HaYartzeit v'Hahilula Shal Avi Adoni Meidi v'Rabbi Levi Yitzchak ben Harav Avi Adoni Zikni Baruch Shneir Zechrenu Levracha. It's the Yartzeit of my father. Zeh Arbaim Shana, that was the 40th year. And then the Rebbe says, V'alai hachoy v'haschus gadol, I have the great obligation and schus lahatzia to suggest, ulevakish, and to request. And then the Rebbe wrote v'chulu, underlined, meaning etc., but underlined it. However much I'm going to add and say and ask to suggest and to request, but that doesn't even really fully express how much the Rebbe is asking that we should do the following in honor of his father's Yartzeit. That what's the Rebbe asking? Lilmoid behisvadus miteirasoi, that to participate in a Farbrengen, and in that Farbrengen to learn from the Torah of the Baal Ha'ilula, ulenade b'yom adain l'schus nishmasoi, l'zeicher nishmasoi, and that to take time on this day to make a donation to tzedakah in his schus, shemasar nafshe al fatzayadus b'tzeichechi b'nei Yisrael me'achayre masach habarzel, which he sacrificed his life, was Meiser Nefesh, to spread Yiddishkeit amongst Bnei Yisrael behind the Iron Curtain, quote unquote, Va'al Yideza hayachavush b'veisa asurim, v'nishpat legalus, u'meis b'goyla v'sham, v'nuchasik havid. And because of that, as a result of that, he was arrested and held in jail, and he was sent into exile, and he was nostalgic over there in exile, and he's buried over there. May his merit protect us and all the Yidden. May they live and be well. So this is the Rebbe's direct request, suggestion, v'chulu, that we should join this Farbrengen and to study his teachings and to give to tzedakah in his chus. When we discuss the teachings of the Rebbe's father, so that's what we're going to do in this Farbrengen. The Rebbe said, Chof Av Tafshin Lametes, that he said that on a Yartzeit it's customary to join to share of the teachings of the Rebbe's father, but really the Rebbe said that in this case there's no need, because everything that I say I learned from my father. The Rebbe brought the story from the Gemara that Rebbe Lazar was the Talmud of Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yochanan one time heard how Rebbe Lazar was giving a share in the Beis HaMedrash. And he said, but he didn't mention something that he learned directly from Rabbi Yochanan. He didn't mention that he learned it from his teacher Rabbi Yochanan. And Rabbi Yochanan felt hurt. He wasn't happy. Why didn't he say it? Who he learned it from? And someone told Rabbi Yochanan, everybody knows that Rabbi Lazar is your Talmud, and everything he says is coming from you. So it's not even. There's no need to even. He should even say it. The same thing that Rebbe said about himself, that he's not only a Talmud, but he's a Ben, Bnei, and Talmidoi, and everything that he says is coming from him. So this also drives home for us how important and special is this special day, that the Rebbe said that everything that the Rebbe shares with us is coming from his father. So later on, we're going to have in this Farbrengen Rabbi Mendel Kaplan from a shliach of the Rebbe in Toronto, Canada, that he's going to give a share in teaching of the Rebbe's father. In order to follow along in the share, you can go to the link that was posted in the chat of this Zoom, and it should also be in the YouTube comments, vechom.com/COVID20 of, and over there you can find the text, the booklet, the PDF that Rabbi Kaplan is going to be teaching from. And before that, we'll just start off this Farbrengen was saying l'chaim, and that like the Rebbe says, schus yagin aleinu, and we should have the schus to connect with the Rebbe on this special day, l'chaim, l'chaim. The Rebbe also said in this letter that I just read that we should give to tzedakah in his schus, and in fact, the Rebbe himself, every year on Chof Av, would make a magbis, would make a collection for tzedakah for a fund, the Keren, that he opened in the schus of his father. And interestingly enough, this Keren was the Rebbe, Tavshin Chof Daled was the 20th Yartzeit of the Rebbe's father, from Tavshin Daled until Tavshin Chof Daled. And the Rebbe said that there's many schools which teach Al Taras HaKodesh, whether they only teach Limudei Chol or Limudei Kodesh, or whether they teach it in a way, they teach that the Limudei Kodesh is prioritized and is shown that that's the Iker, and the teacher, sometimes they need a help because they need a loan, and the Rebbe said he's opening the Keren Levi Yitzchak to give loans to such teachers. But the Rebbe said that this was actually B'Sarusadol Sata, that this Keren was being opened because there was a woman. The Rebbe specified that she was American-born woman and her husband was American-born, and they did not have their parnasa was for a number of years they had very little money. Their parnasa was very much b'doichat, but and people owed them money. There was a large sum of money that was owed to them, but they weren't getting it. And now, a number of years later, in Tavshin Chof Daled, maybe their matzah parnasa was a little better, and suddenly they received a large sum of money that was owed to them from years before. And this woman wrote to the Rebbe that she made a cheshbon, that being that now she received the money, but right now it's not so negea for parnasa to have this. It was $5,000. $5,000 is in Tavshin Chof Daled. It was a lot more money than $5,000 is now. It was a very large sum of money. And she said, being that it's not so negea right now in our parnasa right now, the fact that it's suddenly arriving in our bank account means that we have to give it to the Rebbe. And she gave $5,000 check. She gave it to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe was meidich and said how she's not. She didn't grow up with Mesiras Nefesh. She grew up in America, and still she had the hanacha that when a sum of money comes, it has to go straight to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe used this money to start the Keren of Gemilas Chasadim, Keren Levi Yitzchak, that every year by the Chof Av Farbrengen, the Rebbe would make a magbis, even though the Rebbe said numerous times that really I don't have to discuss it every year, but because people will think that if I didn't say it this year, so then that means that it's not negeya. So Mamela, the Rebbe said, I'm saying it's negeya every single year that people should give to this magbis. And there was one year that Taka the Rebbe didn't mention it, but then on Chof Av they made another Farbrengen in Tavshin Mem Daled Taka, and the Rebbe made another Farbrengen, and the Rebbe said, why people should have realized and understood that just because I didn't mention it doesn't mean you don't have to give. So surely this is something which is very important, and the Rebbe gave brachas for all those who participate, and you can contribute to this magbis of the Rebbe on magbis.org on the front page, or kerenleviyitzchak.com. There's also another, on the topic of giving tzedakah of Chof Av, there's also the meistis that the Rebbe requested to open Keil Tiferes Kenim Levi Yitzchak, and that's also something that the Rebbe mentioned that we should be contributing. I mean, obviously, there are those who run these Keilim by themselves, or who have the ability to open such a Keil. The Rebbe said that he participated monetarily in whoever opened such a Keil in the name of his father. But for sure, it's something which everyone could contribute to, as well as there's another thing which is especially connected with Chof Av, is the Siyum Sefer Torah L'Yalda Yisrael, which this year in Shnas Hakel it's a special Yom Tif that the 8th Sefer Torah is being completed tomorrow in Yerushalayim Irakedesh by the Kaisel Maravi. So something which the Rebbe was very, very close to the Rebbe. And also the Rebbe said specifically that this is something that everybody should participate in. If you can't make it beguf, but surely you should be mishtatif b'nishmasei u'b'bamoinei. So how to be mishtatif b'nishmasei? We'll leave that out to everybody to figure out how to do. But for sure, b'mamoinei, that's something which everyone could contribute to the Siyum Sefer Torah Liyal Yisrael, which is taking place tomorrow in Yerushalayim. On the topic of making farbrengens, there's also there's also the special connection with children on Chof Av that for many years the children of Camp Gan Yisrael, from the beginning of the Lamids and from the middle of the Lamids until today, come into the Rebbe for Chof Av, and it's a special shaykh with children. The Rebbe made rallies, and the Rebbe was makarev them by the farbrengens. And on chofav.com, if you go to chofav.com, vechom.com/Chof Av, you can find material that has to do with children and the Deher for Kids podcast that children can utilize. And we're now going to, before we move on to the next part of the Farbrengen, with Rabbi Kaplan giving a shiur in the Torah of the Rebbe's father, which once again you can find in the following link to follow along with the shiur, vechom.com/kovetz20 of, KOVETZ 20 of AV. You could go to that website to follow along with the booklet, with the shiur. And before the shiur begins, we're going to watch a brief video of the Rebbe, the singing of the Rebbe's father's niggin, the Kafas niggin, together with the campers of Camp Gan Yisrael by the Farbrengen. L'chaim, l'chaim. Hold on 1 second. While the video is being organized, I'm going to share a brief. Oh, here we go.
אז wie Tzadikim Demim Lebelam, Malachas Kame Vekame Rabbonim, seien sie sich nicht, was ist mit der Kild Momo Dako, und bei sie ist das Arash Godel, und Ruach Gdele, und Farakis Horim, Bechule, Bechule. Da sehen wir seien sich Balabatim, nicht Rabbonim, ich machen den Emerson Rasch. Ay, 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 hey!
Before the Shiur begins in the Rebbe's father's Torah, I'm just going to share a brief Torah that the Rebbe shared with us on Chof Av Tafshin Lamed Tes. Was a Monday night Farbrengen. Chof Av was Sunday night and Monday, just like this year. The Rebbe said that all of us who are impacted by the Rebbe's father are Zarei B'chaim, and therefore, as we learn these lessons from his life, we are continuing his life, and that takes the Yartzeit, that instead of being a sad day, which usually it's which of course there is a sad element, but when we learn these lessons and we implement them, we make that he should be Hu B'chaim, and that turns it into a happy day. So the Rebbe said, which this is also something which the Rebbe stressed in the letter which I read earlier. The Rebbe stressed on the fact that he was sent into Galus, into exile, because of his Mesiras Nefesh for Yiddishkeit, and that he passed away into exile. The Rebbe explained that not only was he in exile during his life, and not only did he pass away in exile, in Galus, but he's even in Galus, Ada Yom Hazeh, in middle of nowhere. And as we know that it's mamish in middle of nowhere, and it's not even a Yiddish cemetery. There was a certain area blocked off, a very small area blocked off for this purpose, for the Rebbe's father, but it's mamish in a place full of goyim, v'chulu, and mamish in Galus. The Rebbe said that this is just like Moshe Rabbeinu, who stayed in the Midbar to be with his flock, with his dirt. And when Mashiach comes, the Rebbe said that he'll get up from there, from Almatah, and go with his mushboim and his talmidim from Russia to Eretz Yisrael with Mashiach Tzidkenu. So the Rebbe said, what's the lesson from this for us, which we live in the United States or in other countries, but Baruch Hashem, the Chastei Hashem, we don't have all of these nisyonis, anxieties, and Mesiras Nefesh that we have to endure. So how are we supposed to relate to this? And the Rebbe said that really it's true that we don't have to have the same type of sakanas nefashos and this same type of galus, but really every one of us has to learn from the Rebbe's father that we have to go into galus, because we're all Baruch Hashem, to one extent or another, we're blessed with many brachas and with many comforts, and we're able to serve Hashem with mitoich harchava. But we can't suffice with everything that we serve Hashem mitoich harchava. We have to remember that having geilul l'makom Torah, you have to go out of your comfort zone, and just like we know that the famous Perek in Tanya, Perek Tes Zayin, that says how in the times of the Gemara they would learn everything 100 times, but as someone who, because that was the norm and that was his comfort zone, to chazer over 100 times, he's considered lo yavoda. He's not serving Hashem. When are you considered serving Hashem? Only when you go out of your comfort zone and you learn it 101 times. So the Rebbe said the same things with us. You could even have, let's say, the Rebbe gave a great drasha shiva. He gives the shiurim and he teaches talmidim. This was the example that the Rebbe gave, but we could all, translate that into our own life. Whatever we do and we serve Hashem, but we have our comfort zone and we get covered and we enjoy it. But then there's when you go out of your comfort zone, and that's the Yirah that we have to learn from the Rebbe's father to go into Galus, to leave your lech lecha me'artzecha me'miladetcha me'beis avicha. And only then the Eibishter tell Avram that once he'll leave his place, leave where he grew up, leave his habits, leave his comfort zone, then ve'yei bracha, that's when you see true bracha. The Rebbe stressed, though, that it doesn't mean with the person who learned 100 times, they didn't tell me you have to learn 200 times. You have to learn 101 times. Don't think that until you learn double your comfort zone, you go completely out of your comfort zone, that's when it's going to be considered galus. Even one more time, even a little bit, to go a little bit out of your comfort zone, that's already a significant accomplishment, and that's the Yirah that we can learn from the Rebbe's father, b'negeya to Benegea to the Indian of going into Galus. As we're waiting for Rabbi Kaplan to join, he's going to be here in 3 minutes. I'm just going to share another thing that has to do with the Rebbe's father. And the Yartzeit is something that we saw how much Nachas Ruach the Rebbe expressed when people would give a name on the name of his father to a child. Generally the Rebbe, one of the expressions of this is that generally in the letter that the Rebbe wrote, giving a bracha for a new child, the Rebbe would write, I received the Haidah of the new child, and it would put in the name, and it would write Sheyichya. But when the child was given a name on the name of the Rebbe's father or other close family members, the Rebbe added, often with a Ksav Yad, added Shlita, and a special bracha to this child who's carrying his father's name. That's another thing that the Rebbe appreciated in us, honoring his father's memory. On the theme of learning the Rebbe's father's Torah, I would like to mention that Kahas now has Kahas has a special discount hanacha for the few days around Chof Av, which everyone can to make it easier to be able to purchase the Svarim that deal with the Torah of the Rebbe's father. In recent years, many new Svarim are being published, even though everybody knows that the Rebbe's father writes in Kabbalah and it's hard to learn. But first of all, the Rebbe would share from his father's Torah every week by the Farbrengen, every Shabbos Farbrengen, every single Shabbos Farbrengen for close to 30 years. But even more than that, in recent years, there's many Svarim which are being published, which are making the Rebbe's father's Torah accessible in various different languages, in Hebrew and English and other languages, and making it a lot easier to learn with selections, with explanations, with stories which bring out the points, etc., etc. So you can go to kahas.com to make use of this special hanacha. And Rabbi Kaplan should be here any minute. Unfortunately, he was a bit delayed, but he's going to be here any minute. And hold on. Just one moment. the Rebbe stressed that Chof Av comes right after Chamish Asa B'Yav, which is a time to increase in learning Torah, called the Mosif Yosef Chaim Al Chayev, that when we add in learning Torah, as well as giving tzedakah, that brings Yosef Chaim Al Chayev. And this Farbringen, we're adding in learning Torah and schus of the Rebbe's father, and after the Shiur and the Rebbe's father, Mitzvah Shem will continue also with further Farbringens. Someone asked to say again the story about the founding of the Keren, when the Rebbe said when he started the Keren Levi Yitzchak. So the Rebbe said that there was an American couple who for many years weren't getting the payments that they were supposed to get for what they were working for, and therefore they were in a great doichak, their parnasa. But then later on the money later on their parnasa was better, they had appropriate parnasa, and then at that time by surprise the money that was owed to them from years before, they received that money, and it was $5,000. And because the woman wrote a letter to the Rebbe that because this money came in by surprise, they weren't expecting it, and they didn't especially need the money at that time. So they took it as a davar apasha, that if they're getting a surprise amount of money, then it should go to the Rebbe. So they gave the entire sum of money, $5,000, to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe used that money to start the Keren Levi Yitzchak, which was used to give loans to teachers who teach Al Taras HaKodesh. And later on, I believe the Rebbe also used that Keren to participate in all the Koilot Tiferes Kenim Levi Yitzchak that was opened in honor of his father, Koilim for older people to learn Torah. And this is a Keren which the Rebbe raised money for every year on Chof Av. The Rebbe asks that now as well, we should give tzedakah. You could find it on magbis.org, as well as the Rebbe asked that we should learn in a Farbringen, we should learn his father's Torah. We have here with us Rabbi Mendel Kaplan, a shliach of the Rebbe from Toronto, Ontario. He's going to learn with us from the Rebbe's father's Torah. It was just posted in the chat on the Zoom, as well as if you're watching on YouTube, you can see in the YouTube description where you can go to the webpage to follow along with the Shiur. So to continue now with this Farbringen, Lubid, Vesvados, Mitirase, we will ask Rabbi Mendel Kaplan. L'chaim.
Yasher Koyach for the privilege of learning a little bit of the Rebbe's Holy Father's Torah. I'm sorry for my tardiness. I only got this assignment on Friday, and I had the schus to be at the Oil over Shabbos. I was traveling today. I didn't have the time I would have liked to prepare Inyan properly. Really and truly, to learn even a small piece of the Rebbe's Torah takes me 5 to 7 hours to properly go through all the Marmakemis and understand the profundity. In the copies that are made, it's a little bit mitzutat, and they open up simply with a statement which actually doesn't say in the Makar. In the Sefer doesn't say that. They start off with something. I don't have the copy in front of me now, but it says something to the effect of that the Shulchan is the inyan of Yichud Zun. So that's not the Rebbe's father's lashon. The Rebbe does not say the Shulchan is an inyan of Yichud Zun. The Rebbe's father didn't write that at all. It's not based on the inyan of the Shulchan, the design of the Shulchan per se. It's a Torah that's found in the Aris LeMesichtis in Meseches Menachos, and the Rebbe stellt sich on a different Mishnah altogether. His father stellt sich on the Mishnah of Abba Shol. Then you get to the Bazichen, which is the herb or frankincense that was placed on the lechem bapanim, and there's a machlekes exactly how it was placed. So the Rebbe's father goes into pratim and prite pratim, and I just want to say that the Rebbetzin Chana told my grandfather, Olav Shalom, that when she came to when she came to Chile, she came on a Friday, and she sent a telegram to the Rebbe Levik that she was coming. And when she came, when she was Friday afternoon, and she told my Zayde, as ich hab gesehen, mein Mann und ich hab nicht erkannt. And she said, bis ich hab gehört sein Kol, hab ich nicht geglaubt, dass es And today we see a little bit of the pictures, the picture we had all along, and then the picture that came out later. You see the difference, like two different people. I'm just going to speak it a little bit, maybe in a grobe sprach, because most of us, with the exception of some of the very great chassidim here, are regular, basav adagim, grobe people. The hafla of the Rebbe's father being in the circumstances that he was, and writing Torah and chidusha Torah, like incredibly profound, brilliant chidusha Torah. It's mamash merafsen igra. It's shocking. It's not begeder enushi. It's pashat not begeder enushi. Yeah, we hear stories of people in concentration camps. They put on tefillin. People try to learn a little bit, uplift people around them. But that a person could be mirakez, a human being could be mirakez himself to learn Torah with virtually no svarim, and to without paper, and to be writing in the prolific way that he wrote is totally off the charts, and it's something absolutely astounding. It's just astounding. I mean, like when you start to learn some of the Rebbe's father's Torah, and on occasion I've discussed sometimes to go through a piece and to properly go through it and understand it. It's pashat meida meroyim. There's no words to describe it. You have to know that Rebbe Levik lived in circumstances. There was no SS guards, and there was there's no crematorium, but he lived with the suffering, mamash, like starvation, physical abuse, emotional abuse. So it was like a concentration camp. Like he lived under horrific conditions. The Rebbe used to speak about the Rebbe's mother, that she would go and collect herbs. My Zayda said, "You don't understand. My Elter Zayda was one town away, 60 kilometers away from Rebbe Levik. He was in a place called Nikurgan. That was the second to the most remote place. And Rebbe Levik was in Chile. Nothing grows in this place. You can't find a blade of grass. The people over there, they eat reindeer. You can't find something green. To find something green, to find something to make ink out of, was Mesiras Nefesh Mamash. And the Rebbe's father lived under such harsh conditions and with so little to eat, barely subsisting. The fact that he had the mental acuity to focus on and learn Torah on this level it's astounding. It's pashat astounding. And the bikiyas that he had, and he writes Mar Mekemis, and he writes Dafim and Favorfene Kabbalah Svarim and Shas and Kisva Arizal Poskim. It's something that is not bedara deuna, pashat not bedara deuna, and I think it's important for us to know this. And who is Rebbe Levik writing for? As I understand, and I try to inquire this a little bit, almost everything that we have from the Rebbe's father was produced under these terrible, harsh conditions. Almost everything that we have, except for the Michtovim and the things that he wrote to the Rebbe, all of the Rebbe's Torah the father's Torah that we have was Torah that was written on the margins of Svarim, under the harshest of conditions that's imaginable, and it's just unbelievable. I mean, there's just no words for it. I think we need to know this, and I think we need to appreciate it. And it's almost shocking that nobody kochzich in the Rebbe's Torah. The Rebbe pleaded, the Rebbe begged us, told us that there's amazing things over here. And very few people. I mean, David Duba Zachar Latev, that he threw himself into it, and what he's helping us to discover is Pashat Meida Miroim. Akopanim, in the photocopies that they made, they focused literally on a few lines within a very, very long piece, and maybe, I don't know, maybe that's the biggest chiddush of this piece. I'm not so sure. I don't even know if any of us are shaykh to know what's the biggest chiddush or not. But David Dubov, I guess, felt this was the biggest chiddush, or maybe this is the chiddush that was maybe the easiest for us to understand without having the full background. So he put this together in the Yalkut. Akoponim, I think that the background that we have to have over here, which is not at all written in the actual Keren Levi Yitzchak, is that the concept of the Shulchan represents the idea of Parnasa. And this is something which is a Chazal, and it's something which you find in the Rishonim. And the Rebbe and the Shima Samanera actually talks about it a number of times. He alludes to this a number of times. So the Rebbe bases it on the Gemara. The Rebbe, interestingly, does not quote the Rishonim, and there are a number of Rishonim that speak about it. The Rebbe bases it on the Gemara in Bava Basra, and Daf Chafei Amud Beis, that the Gemara says, "Hareitze sheyachkim yadrim, u'sheyashe yatzpin." The Simonach, that you have the Shulchan b'tzafen and the Menera b'darim. So in other words, the Shulchan is the Inyan of Ashirus, or Inyan, like the Rebbe speaks over there about Hisaskos and Gashmias. Mashenk and the Menera, this is the Inyan of Torah, and this is the Inyan of Hisaskos and Ruchnias, or in Chochmas HaTorah. So this is like a general concept, that we find up in Nigla, and in the Rishima Samaneda, in Sif Samachay, the Rebbe talks about it. The Rebbe talks about it in Sif Pei Dalad. He also talks about it in Sif Ayin Hey. He talks about it in a different way. The Rebbe is Meirich in the Inyonim of the Shulchan being Mesamal Oisher Gashmi. So that's Bechlal, that's from Chazal, and that's something that we see in the Rebbe's Torah. I don't think the Rebbe saw this Torah at that time, and could be there's something that the Rebbe and his father talked about at some point, but that's something that's found in the Rebbe's Torah. And what I found in Rishonim, and again I didn't have the proper time today, and I'm not happy about it, but that is what it is that it's a Medrash HaGadol. The Medrash HaGadol says that the Shulchan is a Zeichel Amon, which is the idea of sustenance. Now, in this much longer piece, the Rebbe speaks about man. The Rebbe's father speaks about man twice when he speaks about the Shulchan. So we know that the Ein of the man is the Ein of, represents the concept of the Ein of sustenance, Ein of Parnasa. And there are multiple Mugdig Asichos from the Rebbe on the Ein of man, and how the Ein of man is Meramaz on Parnasa, and why Dafke the Ein of man is Meramaz on Parnasa. The whole idea that Parnasa is a nes, and that we have to have B'tachon in the Eibishter, and that's why it was made in that way. It was made in a manner that the man fell on a daily basis, and nobody had a pantry, because the Eibishter is teaching us how we have to look at Parnasa, and we have to know that everything comes from the Rebbeinu Shalom. So the whole concept of sustenance and is connected to the man. And the Medrash HaGadol is Meirech that the Shulchan represents the Ein of the man, and he touches a little bit on the Ein of Parnasa as Ashiris. But in the Sefarno, which the Rebbe would quote many times, the Sefarno says clearly that the Shulchan is the Ein of Shulchan Malachim, and he says that the responsibility of a government or of a monarch is self-defense and economy. These are the two inyanim. So we don't have anything like that represents warfare or self-defense in the Mishkan, but the inyan of providing for the citizens. And the Sefarno says very clearly that the Shulchan is where the bracha of Parnasa came to Yidden. The Beinu B'chaya ben Asher also is Meirich in this inyan that through the Shulchan that was the sheidish of bracha and Parnasa, and through the achila of the lechem apanim of the kohanim, and through the kohanim having their svia, through this, that's how Klal Yisrael had svia. And there's also there's a lesson on Rishon called Rabbeinu Tuvia, who also is Meirich in this inyan that the Shulchan brings the in of bracha to Parnasa. Okay, so this is like a little bit of background. In the notes, Reb David is mayor that in Eira Torah and Parshas Vayakel, the Tzemach Tzedek speaks about the Shulchan as the in of birurim. It's like not Parnasa in a crass way, but he already talks about it like in a refined eif, an in of birurim of Malchus Datzilus, and that's why it's called the Shulchan Shel Adam Elyon, which is Yered Libiyah. And the whole idea of the Shulchan Shel Adam Elyon, which is Yered Libiyah, is Levar Birurim. So this is like a little bit of background to what the Rebbe's father is talking about. So the Levik is talking about this idea of the Shulchan. And Levik says, and I just want to give you the background because it doesn't actually say, and I couldn't find it anyway, it doesn't say Shulchan hu yichud zon. The Rebbe's father says like this: Ki Shulchan remez al Yesod the Nukva. and I don't know if this is a chiddush. It's very possible that it's a chiddush, that what it says over here. I don't know. You have to look in Kisar Rizal. But the Rebbe father writes that the Shulchan is Reimez al Yesod Nukva, and the Rebbe's father is not mitzayint anywhere. And he brings three rayas and psukim. He says, because it says, K'maimer Shulchan arachtili, which is a euphemism that's used. There's multiple euphemisms that's used when you get to the union of Ishus and when you get to Meitzah Shemra and other things. So you have this concept of Shulchan. And the Rebbe's father says that the lechem upon him is Sha'ala Shulchan, which is the union of Achila, is the union of Yesod the Duchra. And he brings rayas for this. He brings Ve'echeles Imei Milele Shabbos, with Tzadik Eicheles Seva Nafshay, and he brings down the Zoyar. So he says that basically when you have the lechem upon him that's being placed on the Shulchan, you have the union of Yesod, and you have the union of Nukva, which is the yichud, ultimately, of Zun, because Yesod is the siyum aguf, and that's the siyum of the of Chagas and Nehi. So since it's the siyum of Chagas and Nehi, if you're placing Yesod on the concept of the Shulchan of the Yin of Malchus, so you're talking about the Yin of Zun, the Pashtas already. But the Rebbe's father's Maidach also, and he speaks about the Inyan of the 6 Lechomim, the Lechem upon him that was piled up 6. And he talks about the fact that it's Kofel, and he's been signed to a Zoyar and a Kisvar Rizal, about the Inyan of Vav and Vav Kofel, and uses multiple ways to demonstrate how the Inyan of Yesod represents ultimately not only Yesod, but ultimately represents the larger schematic, if you will, of the Inyan of Zeid Ampin. Then on the bottom of Amud Reish Mem Beis, it starts off on Amud Reish Mem Aleph in the Haris LaMesichtes, and it's a long arichis about Abba Shaul and what the Gemara says, the lashon of the Gemara of Olav Mata Menashe, a dion, and the Rebbe's father goes back and forth. I mean, the Marmakemis that fly here are crazy. It takes a normal person many hours to go through line by line to figure out what's going on over here. And this interspersed constantly with Chedushim over here. The Rebbe's, he's quoting things, and then he's saying, and he says something which doesn't really say anywhere. And then he quotes. Anyway, so towards the bottom of the Reish Mem Beis, the Rebbe's father addresses, after demonstrating, improving in multiple ways, and again, I'm not even sure how many new things it says on this page. The Rebbe's father says that the lechem hayatzarich liyas ala shulchan tamid. So we know from the Gemara that when they used to put the kohenim used to put the lechem on the shulchan, that you didn't take off the old lechem and put new lechem on, but actually they would put the lechem on, they would slide the new lechem in as the old lechem would go off. And I didn't have time to figure out if the actual the tubes were between them lechatchila or they inserted them after. For sure, the posts that were supporting on the side were not there. That obviously was something that had to be taken off. And whether they took off the lechamim, when the new lecham came on with the tubes in place already, and then they just lifted them up and put them on the shelves, or whether they put after, I'm not sure. It could be the Gemara talks about it again. Levashti Hamaruba, it was partially impossible for me to be Mayan today. I just got back. So Akoponim, what we do know from the Gemara, this is very clear, is that the lechem has to be on the shulchan at all times. Lechem panim lefonai tamid. So since the Torah says lechem panim lefonai tamid, so the Rebbe's father now speaks about this api pnimis hanyanim, that lechem panim lefonai tamid is ki hayichud tzarich liyas bitmidius ki ein lahafrid. This is the Lashon HaKedesh of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak. Ki ein lahafrid yesod u'malchus zeh mizeh chas v'shalom. So I just am saying like a ha'ara that there is multiple descriptions of yichud zun in Torah, where we have this emphasis on not making any interruptions. Probably the most famous one is that you're not mafsik ben geula to tefillah. So geula is the union of zun, and tefillah and tefillah is the union of malchus, and it's like one of the famous ones. But there's multiple places where it talks about not being mafrid between the yichud of zun and of malchus or of zon nukva. In modern day language, it would this is the electromagnet, and if the system goes down, if you're mafrid between the union of zun the union of Zoh and Nukva, the system goes down. And if the system goes down, so then then it doesn't work. We can't be sustained. So you have to have this, you have to build this electromagnet, you have to put together the Zoh together with Malchus, and when you have the Zoh, the Yichud Zun, that's when the system is in place, and that's when Parnasa is coming to us. So now the Rebbe's father says like this: V'hoyu daled snifim shel Zov mifutzolin mereshein sheyosemcha behem beis l'seder zeh or beis l'seder zeh. And in the copies they quote a pasuk, and they quote a Mishnah, the Mishnah Menachos that speaks about this. And there's various ways that this is drawn out. I don't think anybody knows for sure what mefutzel, in what way it was mefutzel. The most common drawing is where you see the supports come together on the bottom, like it's in the drawing of that they were mefarsim now. It's one of the drawings that's out there. And you have basically like the supports divide in three. They branch off in three. There's two on the side and one central one. And that's what the supports look like. I've seen other mefarshim draw it like I think maybe even the Kahaskom, I remember seeing it where they draw it like a straight line, and they have just like the shelves coming out either on a diagonal or coming out straight. I saw some depicted as almost like a board. I don't think we know actually. I don't think we know that there were supports. We know that they were mefutzel, and we know that they were enabled to be able. There was like niches in them. They were able to receive these tubes. And b'pashtus, the reason the tube wasn't left round is that it shouldn't roll off. So they took a tube and cut it in half. So mastama, the flat side or the two ends were on the bottom. The round side, the dome was on the top. It's not gonna roll. The bread's not gonna roll off. There's weight of the bread that is the lechem upon is weighing down, and therefore it's able to. It's the lechem upon him doesn't put pressure on one another, and it leaves a little bit of air in between. So we have this the way the Mishnah describes it, that we have these dalid snifim, and the dalid snifim have these tubes in between, which become like a shelf that lechem upon is on. You have the supports on either side, and the konim, these tubes that are cut in half, these konim and the half reeds of gold end up being chof ches konim. They end up being 28 konim. Yudalid l'seder zeh, v'yudalid l'seder zeh. Again, I don't want to say silly things, but to the best of my knowledge, nowhere in Torah did anybody actually talk about what this represents. Like, what does it mean, these snifim? What does it mean, these konim? Why is there 28? Why are they there? Pashtas, pshat is the snifim are there to support it, and the pashtas, they don't want to be mafred entirely between the lechem aponim. It was just to put a little bit of air in between. The lechem aponim be'etzim have to be connected, so therefore they were half tubes, and half tubes it was just on a pashtastic way, a very ordinary way. It kept the lechem aponim in place. But so the Rebbe's father is looking at this. And I can only imagine that every union in Torah is exact, every union in Torah is precise, and if it's important that these lechem aponim have to be in place and they have to be supported in exactly this way with exactly this amount of konim, there has to be some kind of deep message. There's nothing is stam kacha. On the level of pshat is pshat, and then it goes from madrega to madrega till we go to the union of seid. So we have to kind of figure this whole thing out, and I guess that's the premise. The premise is that the Rebbe's father is looking at this in a way. This is the Metzias. This is what it represents. So there has to be an explanation as to why it is, and we don't have an explanation. So this initial way is going to intuit an explanation which is based on everything I'll say. I want to interject with another. Maybe it's a very grubby maisa, but I don't know. For ordinary people, I think it's helpful. So I was many years ago. I was in the Svarim Bigeleisen. I was giving a share then in Detroit, and I was trying to get as many Svarim as I could in the Gemara. These days, you could listen to everything online. But those days, you had to actually use books. So I was trying to get all the raid, all the achreinim to try to figure out to say Shiur. So the guy he's trying to convince me. He wants to sell me a Torah Shlema. And I'm embarrassed to admit I was a kid. I was 24. I don't know what a Torah Shlema is. I don't know. Nobody ever told me you should better Torah Shlema. Really, if I would learn the Sichas right, I would know what a Torah Shlema is because Rebbe's been signed to it. But I didn't know what a Torah Shlema is. I'm like, I have 5 chumashim. Like I'm giving shiur now in Gemara. I don't need a Torah Shlema. And he says, you understand what a Torah Shlema is? It's like every chazal and every pasuk. I'm like, yeah, whatever. He says to me, and it's just funny the way he said it because I only later understood what he was saying to me. He said to me, the Satmarov never gave a drasha without looking at the Torah Shlema. And I'm like looking at him like, oh wow, like shkoyach, that does not speak to me, my friend. You did not. If you wanted to sell me a Torah Shlema, that was not going to excite me. But whatever, I was like, okay, fine. But I later understood, like, whatever you're going to say about the Rebbe Elisha, he was a Goren in Torah. There's no question he was a Goren in Torah. And basically, he said a lot of wild things, but he never said something which is against Chazal. He had to make sure that he wasn't saying something which contradicts Chazal. So basically, before he would give his drasha, whatever he came up with in his head, he had to make sure to go over, and Torah Shlema was like a modern guy, Mendel Akasha, they told him Mendel Treif and they didn't like him. He had to make sure the Poel Mamish, he did the work. He was, all the Chazals are there. If you say something which contradicts Chazal, it's not a Dvar Torah, it's a Dvar Shtus. And I try to explain this, people in my community sometimes, they think they have Kedushim and Torah. I'm like, my friends, we're not shy of the Chiddush and Torah. Kol Masha Talmud Vosik Osel Lechadish means you have to know Kol Torah Kula to be Mechadash Inyan, that you know this is Torah. If it's Seiser Chazal, it's Shtus. I said, you have to know Kol Torah Kula. Right, so you have. Everybody will admit in the world, from his supporters to detractors, if Yelish was a Geinish Mensch, and before he said something, it gewollt durchgucken auf jede Sache, selber steht in Chazal. I said the hafla of Rebbe Levik, who's living in starvation, he doesn't have. It's menafs and ignorant, like forget concentrate. He has kol Torah kula on his fingertips. And he knows he's able to say things which have never been said before in history. And he knows that it fits with every single Chazal, in Pnimis HaTorah, in Galia the Torah. And he's writing with full confidence. It's astounding. It's pashut astounding. And the world doesn't know. And unfortunately, most of us don't know. They don't realize the hafla of the Rebbe's father. It is mamish, not mimin ha'nushi. It's not mimin ha'nushi that a human being should have such bikiyas in Torah, that a human being should be under such harsh, impossible conditions and be able to muster your knowledge of Kol Torah Kula and to be mechadash in Torah and to write it down on the margins of paper with a tiny bit of ink that you have, because it's off the charts. Anyway, I'm sharing that because I think that most of us are very, very fleshika people, and it's important for us to know this. So Akapanim, the Rebbe's father knows what it says in the Shainim. He knows what it says in Chazal. He knows how the Shulchan is viewed. He knows that Apli Kabbalah, the union of the Shulchan and the Lechem Aponim, it's a mechanism through which the world is being energized, through which we're getting the concept of sustenance. So again, I don't know whether it says it's Yichud Zun or the Rebbe's father figures out that it has to be Yichud Zun, because obviously if the Tzemach Tzedek says that it's the Shulchan Shal Adam Elyon, and that and we have these Lashonos of Chazal, obviously it has to be Nukva. It's Malchus Atzilus, it's Nukva. So the Lechem Aponim are placed on it. Obviously there has to be Yesod, and there's like multiple gematriyos of by the way, Beis Pamim Lechem is gematria Yosef, and Yosef is Yesod, and then he goes into and that connects to what he says before, because he speaks about Menashe, he speaks about Ephraim, and now there's gematriyos upon gematriyos that crisscross with 10 different Kisvei Arizal, where the Rebbe's Mitzayin, the Rebbe's father's Mitzayin, where the Kisvei Arizal is. It's crazy. This is it's unbeschreibbar. It's anyway. So he says now. So he says over here that we have this Seder Kede Issa b'Mishnah Sham. Fine. Pasha spells it out exactly how these were inserted and how it worked. Habeis Pamim Yudalit Kanim. So the Rebbe's father starts to say something for sure new, because it says Yeshlemer. So he says, okay, so we have Beis Pamim, we have 2 times, we have Yudalit Kanim. So he says Yeshlemer. And here, and I don't know why, I tried to reach out to Reb David. I think he's in Almatah. Maybe he didn't respond to me. I tried to. I don't know why he left out the next 7 lines. He just skipped he skipped all these lines. I don't know why. I don't know why. I'm not sure. Anyway, but the bottom line is that the Rebbe's father is there is this concept of Beis Yadayim De'ema, which it says are koirim es yesoid hamalchus, in very anthropomorphical sprach. So there's that these hands of bina, and these hands of bina, they actually they carve out the space. They carve out this well or the space for malchus to be. So what does that mean? First of all, I don't know, but I think what it means is like this. I think most people think of Bina as analysis. So you have an idea, you have chokhmah, you have a creative moment, an epiphany, then you start to develop it. But it's actually not, it's not incorrect, but it's not correct either, because we learn in Chassidus that chokhmah and Bina are trein rein le misparshin. So if chokhmah and Bina are trein rein le misparshin, it's not possible to understand Bina only after chokhmah. I have an epiphany, I have a baraka mavrik, now I have to analyze and I have to develop and build the idea by dissecting it. It doesn't make any sense. If trein rein le misparshin, so it has to be that together. Years ago, we had the famous Rabbi Dr. Twersky. He spoke. So I was speaking to him, and he said to me, he said, "Close your eyes." Okay, so I close my eyes, and he takes my hand and he puts it on something, and he said, "My eyes are still closed." So what is that? I said, "It's a key." He said, "Open your eyes." I open my eyes. It's a key. He said, "How did you know it was a key?" And what now? I felt there's a key. A key is a key. Like I could feel it. So he said, "Why didn't you say it's metal and then say a key? Why did you say it's a key?" I said, "Well, because it is a key." I said, "Because," he said, "that's the pshat that says in Chassidus that Chochmah and Bina is trein rein le misparshin." It's a pashat, a very balabatische kind of mashal, but matzachein beinai, pashat the way to understand it. It's not possible for us to take Chochmah b'ta'arasa. You can't take an idea divested of some kind of description of the idea. Every idea has, it's like having a shalheves with it has to be kshura either to a gachelas, or it has to be kshura to a wick or to oil. You have to frame it in some ways. You come with an idea. Every idea you're going to come with, you're going to use a lashon. And once we're talking about lishonis and what you're talking about sprach, you're already in bina. Like it says in today's Tanya, you're going to Is Hey. It's not possible to communicate without having language. And language is already details. So if you have details, you need details. And so the concept of Bina is what frames an idea. The idea has to be framed in some way. And to frame something, you need to frame it positively. You need to frame it negatively. You have to know what it isn't. Otherwise, you just start mixing things up. And you have to know what it is. So to know what it is, that's yad yamin. That's the yin of chesed. That's the positive definition. So I want to communicate an idea. Here's an idea. Here's a concept. Whether your concept is a glass is half full or half empty, so you're already describing a glass. So you're describing half empty, half full, and that becomes a metaphor. And your glass could be a metaphor for whatever you want it to be, but you still needed to talk about a glass. And like it says in Hilchos Kalim that you have to have, that there's the tzura and there's the keli. And in order for something to be kabel tuma, it has to have a tzura. So when you look at a fork, you don't see a chunk of metal. You see a fork. A fork is mekabel tuma because a fork is a keli. What if you break all the fork? You break off the heads of the fork. It can't be used as a fork. So now it's not looked at as a fork anymore. Now it's looked at as scrap metal. So scrap metal is not mekabel tuma. Something which is raw can't be mekabel tuma. It has to have some kind of form. In other words, the form doesn't have mass. It doesn't have matter. But when you have matter, and you apply form, so then you have a keli. And the keli isn't inherently, it's not, the matter didn't really change. It's the same matter. It weighs the same ounce it weighed before or after, but now it's looked at in a different way. It conveys, it's conceptually something different. Bina is that tzura. You can't have chokhmah without bina. We don't know what that looks like even. We could talk about it conceptually. So every time you have to have bina, you have to have these two yadayim. You have to be able to define something. Forget about analyzing it and deeper definition and well understanding it well. You have to be able to hold it. You have to be able to define it. So it says in Kisvei Arizal says that there's a yin of yadayim de'ema. Okay, fine. And it says in Kisvei Arizal that yadayim de'ema, it's koyrim the yesod of malchus. So the Rebbe's father now imports this idea from Kisvei Arizal, and he says that yeshleimar, that the yudalit konim, this is the Yodayim De'ema, which are creating the possibility that there should be a basin. There should be something to receive the Yesod of Malchus. Without the Shtei Yodayim, you don't have a basin. You can't have Malchus. So if you don't have Yodayim, where's your Malchus? It doesn't work. And everything has to be precise. So just like the Shulchan is an image and a metaphor for Malchus, so that you have to have, even though we're talking about Yichud Zun, and Yichud Zun is all Amidis, and this is already a Meichen, you still have to have those Shtei Yodayim. So the Shtei Yodayim, Ve'ema, is a concept in Kisvei Arizal. But here the Rebbe's father is importing those in that inya Yeshleimar, that the base pamim Yudaot Konim is the Yudayim De'ema. And that gives, he talks about Mon very interestingly. He talks about Mon again. and this is like, it lines up with the Medrash HaGadol, because the Medrash HaGadol says the Shulchan is the inyan of man. He doesn't, of course, talk about all this, but he says it's a keli for the man. And in the ha'aras on the back in English, they put the inyan of biyadcha af kedruchi, and how it goes both ways, and it's inyan of be'er. So there was Father cross-reference. And again, I don't know why it's not in the Lashon HaKodesh. I don't know why it wasn't mitzutut. But if you look in the ha'aras in English, he does bring this down. He brings down the next few lines that the Rebbe's father writes. And he also biyadcha af kedruchi, and over there they bring the Mekaydes from Kisra Arizal, and the shaykhs of what that has over here, why that kind of dovetails into the inyan of Malchus, and why it's important to understand the clean of Malchus. And again, he mentions that it's a keli for man. Second time over here that it's a keli for man, which again, check, astounding, exactly what the Medrash says. Okay, so then the Rebbe's father on Amud Reish Mem Gimel. Then his father comes back to, okay, so now, what does that mean? What does that mean, Yesh Leimar, that the Yud Daled Konim is Beis Yudayim de Ema? It doesn't even make any sense. Like, what do you mean? Yud Daled Konim is, how is that Beis Yudayim? So the Rebbe's father says, I don't know, it's just like unbelievable. Like, the Borek HaMavrika, the creativity here is astounding. But again, like, against the background of Kol HaTorah Kula, knowing that it fits into everything that says everywhere. B'chol yad yesh heyetz bois. Af a hand to finger. So you have 5 fingers. Everybody knows a hand has 5 fingers. In heyetz bois, there's Yudalet Pirkin. Why? Because you have gimel in Dalet bois. You have 4 sections on 4 of your fingers. And then a begudel, then in the thumb, you have beis Pirkin. So b'meila, the hand is made up of these, so to speak, of these pieces. Now the inyan of the sections of the finger enables the fingers to close. Otherwise, our fingers will be like flat. The concept of grasping something, of fingers that close, really, it's a very binadika thing. It's very binadika. That's how we grasp something, and that's how you mold it and understand it. And you go into the pratim. The whole idea of our fingers being able to bend that way, that's how we grasp. That's how we're able to hold something. That's very binadik. So the Eibishter makes that the human body is a bedugma shalamayla kaviyachol, and by analyzing mipsari exile, which is understood, like the Rambam says, by understanding the consciousness of a person, but in Kabbalah, the anthropomorphism is taken in a quite literal way. But Mela, since you have on each hand, you have the concept of these prakim, so there you have your hands now. And then the Rebbe says, the father says, that b'neisif, that the misper akonim is lines up to the inyan of yad. B'neisif lozeh, and this is like haflo b'tei haflo. So al derech zeh ba'akonim, the way the konim are lined up. Kamekein ba'adalad avirim shebein hachala tarteina ben hachala harvius hachala chamishis. So he says between the chala on the bottom was betara shel shulchan, that was on the gold itself. But then when you have after that, you start to have these konim that are inserted in between, which create the inyan of avir. Menachem gimel konim, these gimel konim, and that's in order to create avir. Vehem leneged adalat, that's boys. Because the achata gudel, you have 4 fingers. So 4 fingers have 3 sections. So if you're going to have the yodayim, it's almost like you could kaviyachol, like imagine the Eibishter's hands that are holding the inyan of the lechem. So that kaviyachol is tutuv the minyan the yichud, and that was like another detail. Everything fits like perfectly. There's perfect symmetry where the hands are holding the lechamim, the lechem aponim. So when you have hands holding, you're going to have 4 fingers, which is 3 sections. But the top chala, the Mishnah says, since there wasn't as much weight, there's only weight of 1 chala. So in the top chala, there was only 2 konim. So which gives you a sum total of 4 of the konim. Between 4 of the avirim, you have 3 sections, 3 konim corresponding to 3 sections that are on 4 fingers. And then on the top, which is keneged the base pirkei agudel. And it's just like, it's like, wow, it's like and this is all chadash. This is all mamash new. This is, nobody ever thought of this. Nobody ever talked about this. Nobody ever wrote about this. It's it's a tiny piece, by the way. It's almost like a derech agav in a much longer rumination, which is mainly an analysis of the Mishnah with Abba Shol. and the details of Abba Shaul and Abba Shaul's name and Abba Shaul and the gematria of Abba Shaul's name and why he brings that pasuk and why the Mishnah doesn't bring a different pasuk, how it crisscrosses with Menashe. And then, by the way, I don't know why this is again it's not in the copies, but in Omid Esham Gimel, the Rebbe's father in Sugraim adds a very interesting thing. The Hefresh should be in Shulchan lebe'er. Dort hat man wegen a Shulchan und dort hat man wegen a Be'er. So L'chayda Be'er and a Shulchan are not the same kind of thing. So the Rebbe's father says Shneihem Roimzim al Yesod Nukva. Both of them are remes to the union of the Yesod of Nukva. Be'er shaboy yesh mayim v'hu lishtia v'shulchan hu achila. So we know that union of achila in order to have the union of svia, which is brought down. The Rebbeinu Bechaya ben Asher says that you have to have the svia of the koyanim. That's what brings the union of svia and parnasa. So you have to have that union of svia. So the union of svia, the Rambam says that if you don't drink, if you only eat, you don't drink, there's no union of svia. And actually, the Rambam holds, the Rebbe spoke about this once, that if a person only eats bread but he doesn't drink water, that you're not mechuyev min haTorah to say Birchas Hamazon. You're only mechuyev midrabanan. Just like when a person eats less than a pachas make a share, there's only mechuyev midrabanan. And when I learned this, and I remember I remember by Fabrengens, the Rebbe when the Rebbe would wash, the Rebbe would always make sure to drink. It was always you always saw that was always only when he would wash. Otherwise, it was l'chaim. But he would wash, there would always be mayim over there. And the Rebbe would drink water, and he would eat bread at the end. Also, the Rebbe always made sure to drink from the water. Stam, just a very, very interesting thing, a very interesting nekuda. The Rebbe's document also easy kashmit, and everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be in Shulchan Aruch, in the most mohudic way. The Rebbe was always very careful to make sure to drink. So you have to have, when you have achila without shtia is not satiation, and you have to have svi over here. So b'meila in Malchus there has to be two madregas over here. In this union of Malchus, the way it becomes the basin or the mechanism, the diffusion point through which Parnasa comes, there has to be both the union of Be'er and there has to be union of Shulchan. And the Rebbe's father notes further, this is again just wild. The Rebbe says that the Be'er that in Yesod Duchra, the Yesod Nukva, L'pa'amim nimshal achila, or l'pa'amim nimshal ishtia. Sometimes in Chazal, the yichud zun is talked achila, kim halechem ashoechel, and other things like that. And sometimes it's told the yin of shtia, and here the Rebbe's father quotes the Gemara in Seif Gittin, the mashal mikais. That's when somebody finds a mum, and later he says that he didn't know about it and he wasn't aware of it. So we say that it's a chazak al adam that he's bedic in the kais sheshoisa. So we see in Chazal that Chazal called the inyan of yichud zun. Sometimes they use the mashal of lechem and use the mashal of the shulchan, like arachti shulchani, and sometimes use the mashal of kais and of shtia. So the Rebbe's father says that here you have both inyanim. Here you have mitzad echad, you have the inyan of a shulchan, and a shulchan is bread, and a shulchan is achila. But leidach, you have to also have the inyan of shtia that's merumas. So the in of shtia is merumas here by saying that the snifim on the sides are the beis yodayim the ema hakoidim yisoid the malchus. Koidim yisoid the malchus l'chayr is the in of a be'er, and like the Rebbe says afterwards in Biyad Chaf Geruch is the in of be'er. It's the in of be'er, not the in of shulchan. So there's actually another unbelievable, derech agav, the unbelievable chiddush that comes out that l'chayr, if you have this idea of svia, and the svia is, if the shulchan is supposed to be svia, and the shulchan only has achila, so it actually doesn't work, because al pitera svia only comes when you have achila and shtia. So and by giving the meaning to the snifim, and by giving the meaning to the konim, and because the Rebbe's father connects it to the says in Kisva Arizal that this is the beis yodayim of ema, which are kodim, the yesod the abba. So it noch hakashavet veremfert. Now you understand how the shulchan works. That you have both the inyan of lechem as well as the inyan of mayim. This also becomes a representation of mayim as well, and so it's like chiddush agabe chiddush, and this is mamash kama shuris. It's the unbelievable chiddush Torah of Rebbe Levi Yitzchak Nishmas Eben. Anyway, hopefully this whets our appetite, and we start to learn the Rebbe's father's Torah as the Rebbe wanted us to learn it. And we should be zeicha to hear Torah Chadasha. Die Torah Chadashim, Mirz Hashem. Sehen Sie mit dem Rebbe, Mirz Hashem, und sein Besuches Tevis. Rebbe soll den Aussagen von der schwere Golos, was wir gefunden sagt, und der Schuss von Chof Av soll megen sein auf uns, and may it spirit us out of the Cheshach Kafel and Mechupel and bring us into an Inyan of Sevilla, Inyan of Eir, an Inyan of Bias HaMashiach, B'mhedo, B'meno, Amen. Thank you to the Maganim for the Schus. And at this point, I'm not sure what happens next.